Hello, I'm Daniel Raymond. I am near the intersection of Mountain Avenue and the San Bernardino Freeway, about to take my first significant trip. Let's call it a shakedown cruise in my Model Y, the electric Blueberry. And it's called Mountain Avenue because it heads up towards here, Mount San Antonio, more colloquially called Mount Baldy. At 10,064 feet, it is the highest point in Los Angeles County. You can't drive to the summit, but the trailhead to hike there is at 6,600 feet elevation, and we are currently at about 1,000 feet, so particularly in the last third of this trip, it will be steep and twisty, just the thing to get used to the feeling of a car's capabilities. I'm not going to try to do this as a race, just a typical Southern California driver out to have some fun, which is to say at least moderately aggressive. We love to drive in Southern California, and we don't get many opportunities to do so. You might say we spend hours upon hours in our cars. But there is driving, and then there's driving. And on the way up the mountain, there are three things that I had already knew about the Model Y that I knew would work pretty well on a mountain climb, but I had not really expected how well they all worked together. The first is a low center of gravity from that heavy battery in the floor of the car. The second was the full-time all-wheel traction from the dual motor design. And the third was full traction at any speed. Downshifting? Downshift what? Manage the engine RPM? No engine. Sway when quartering? Pretty much non-existent. I could get a little bit of chirp from the tires on a tight turn, but other than that, it was completely routine. Steer and go. My long unused skill at being able to heel and tow a manual transmission on a hill climb seemed now as pointless as my also long unused knowledge about how to use a slide rule or a manual typewriter. At the start, the car predicted that, starting with 87% battery, I would arrive with 65%. In truth, I arrived at 70% with a whopping 795 watt-hours per mile. Time to give the car a rest and my legs a workout. From here, a paved road behind a locked gate leads further uphill to some private cabins, ending at a view of San Antonio Falls, which since the superlative wet winter we have had this year was running extra heavily. San Antonio Falls is a set of waterfalls, most of which are only accessible with mountain climbing gear, but walking up the paved road brings you to within about 100 meters of the lowest and largest of the Cascades. From here, there's a rough scramble you can get to the falls itself, of which this was the closest I felt safe at with the walking shoes I was wearing. From here, this trail continues up to the summit itself, but neither my lungs, my shoes, nor the high-elevation trail conditions was ready for that. When I returned to the car, I saw the watt-hours per mile had increased to 801 while I was away, no doubt from the car cooling down the components having been worked so hard on the way up. So I decided on the way down that I would challenge myself to do it without the use of the brake pedal whatsoever, a full one-pedal descent. And if climbing felt routine, descending it felt strange after decades of needing to manage steep descents with gear selection and judicious use of the brake pedal to not overstrain either the transmission or brakes. But instead, you're just modulating the pressure of your right foot to not enter the corners too fast and not to pick up too much speed on the straight sections. Plus, of course, the low center of gravity and four-wheel regeneration. And I thought, how do I explain this one-pedal driving to others, since explaining things is why I create videos in the first place? And I thought that I would first have to come up with a better name for this thing my right foot was pressing on. It sure wasn't the gas pedal anymore, no gas anywhere to be seen here, and it didn't even feel like an accelerator, since I was only indirectly managing the acceleration with it. No, this was the speed pedal. More pedal, more speed, less pedal, less speed. No pedal, no speed. And the motor generators did what they could to accomplish it. The brake was still the brake, but you only needed it if you needed to stop faster than the speed pedal was accomplishing. And of course, I had to take into account that on the way down, gravity was working against the speed pedal being able to slow me down, just as on the way up, gravity was helping slow me down, as it always has. And the weirdness was soon adjusted to, and to my surprise, at times I was getting over negative 500 watt-hours per mile. All that energy spent going up was coming back, which is different than my experience in the Prius, where the battery wouldn't have much to contribute to the uphill climb and rapidly topped out on the downhill, making this sort of mountain climb in a Prius essentially an entirely internal combustion experience. So back on the valley floor, I descended overall at a negative 286 watt-hours per mile, and the whole trip, up and down, was done at 232 watt-hours per mile, which is pretty much the same as the flat road efficiency I get. For my next video, I'm going to return a little bit more to the rideshare topic and talk about the most important ways to accessorize and configure a Model Y, and in some respects any car, for rideshare use. So subscribe, comment, and if you want to be part of the giveaway when the channel reaches the monetization metrics, include somehow the secret word. And the secret word for this video is what I am suggesting that the one pedal in one pedal driving be called. Drive safe, keep it real, and maybe someday I'll see you in my car. This is Danny Raymond with EV Rideshare LA.